What's going on, everybody? It's Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast, brought to you by Pub Sports Radio with lines presented by Superbook Sports, and this is the undefeated post-weigh-in show for UFC Columbus. We're taking one final look at these fighters before they step into the cage tomorrow, and we're going to take every itsy-bitsy little piece of information we can from them and try and make just one or two little extra better bets to put some cash in your pocket. So getting the weigh-ins started this morning. First fight of the night, Luis Saldaña taking on Bruno Souza. Saldaña came in at 145. Souza came in at 144, so 1 pound under for him. Now, everyone knows Luis Saldaña. He's my fight-ready guy. I want to believe in this kid. I really do. But this is a really close fight, and he did not look good on the scales this morning. He came up, and to be completely honest, he looked jaundiced. He looked pale, like he was off color. His mouth was hanging open. His eyes were dead. He did not look good. His opponent, Bruno Souza, came in a pound under and was completely relaxed. No issues at all. Very fresh looking. And one thing that I actually really enjoy about being back on the normal UFC schedule is that we're getting the ceremonial weigh-ins. Now, I know that pushes the time slot back sometimes for the undefeated post-weigh-in show, and nobody likes the undefeated post-weigh-in show to come out a little bit too late. But what it does do is it saves us from overreacting, because when we see these fighters on the scales, a lot of them look awful. But what really matters is that refueling, rehydration time. Some of them, the Brazilian balloons come to mind, refuel fantastically, and it doesn't affect them whatsoever. They could be dying on the scale, and they will perform just fine Saturday in the cage. Other people, however, do not. And with this gap in time, we can see what they look like a couple of hours later and see whether or not they're actually affected. I don't think Luis Saldaña fully recovered. You see him at the ceremonial face-offs, and he looked a bit twitchy. He looked a little bit shaky. These guys size up extremely well. Saldaña's got a slight size advantage here in this spot. But dang, this was already a close fight, and it was a spot where I was leaning towards Bruno Souza to begin with. If it wasn't for Fight Ready, I'd probably heavily be leaning towards Bruno Souza in this spot. I just know it's going to be close. Luis Saldaña's probably going to come out early and win a round and a half or so, and then blow his wad. And then he's going to be out of gas, and Bruno Souza's going to try and fight his way back in. The problem is, he's a counter-striking karate guy, so unless he goes in for takedowns, or is more aggressive than we've ever seen him be, I don't know if he's going to win that second round. Now, I fully expect that Luis Saldaña will be out of gas in the third, so unless Souza clips him with something big on one of those counter shots to steal that second round, it all comes down to round two. It's going to be 1-1, and how quickly does Luis Saldaña fade out? I am so tempted right now. Like, if there was going to be a post-weigh-in read, this is going to be a post-weigh-in read. I have not bet it, but Bruno Souza has become very, very tempting for me because I already leaned that way, and I really think that Luis Saldaña is compromised from that weight cut. We already know he doesn't have a very good gas tank, so if the weight cut was bad, the gas tank is already bad. I think there's far more of an option for someone like Bruno Souza to fight his way into this fight, and coming out of the Machida Academy, the way he shoots in for takedowns, that's going to drain the gas tank of Saldaña. I do think that Bruno Souza is probably the side here come Saturday. Haven't bet it yet. Not quite sure if I'm going to get there, but I think I might end up on Souza by tomorrow. Next up, David Dvořák taking on Matheus Nicolau. What we've got is Dvořák at 125.5 pounds. Nicolau came in at 126. Now, my guy David Dvořák wasn't sure what to do with his hands. He went up there, he flexed, he stuck his arm in the air, he flexed again, he kind of looked around, waved a little, like he couldn't figure out what he wanted to do on the scales today. It was pretty funny, but all joking aside, he looked fantastic. Nothing wrong with him whatsoever. Nicolau got up there, gave a solid flex. He looked good too. I can't really poke holes in him here. This was an intense face-off. This was a spot where slight size advantage goes to Dvořák, but dang, Nicolau's got a big head. You know, we talk about that. He's got a couple knockout losses. He's been rocked a couple times. It's the size of his head that's keeping him in these fights. That's why he's hard to put away. I'm already on David Dvořák. The market moved against me just a little bit. I got minus 135 on David. It dipped all the way down to where he was like minus 115, minus 120, and now it's coming back my way. So right now, over at Superbook, you can get David Dvořák at minus 130. I still like that side. The thing I really like about this spot, though, is I took a half unit on the knockout prop. People forget how hard David Dvořák hits. He's one of these kids that was a finisher on the regional scene. Now he's had his few fights in the UFC to acclimate to the level. I think he's going to start finishing again. If we had seen him really get to work with his hands recently, If he wasn't coming off of a year-long layoff, I'd probably go a full unit here on this knockout prop and really go for that plus 800. But I'm just going to do the half unit because there is a decent chance this is kind of a staring match. These guys could end up slowing the clock down and heading to a decision here. So I don't want to lose all my profits if he wins a decision swinging for the fences on that KO prop. So half unit sounds pretty good to me here. I'm definitely on the Dvořák side. Nothing changes based on the weigh-ins or the face-offs for this one. If your read was one way, stick with it because both guys look really good. Jennifer Maia taking on Manon Fiorot. We've got Maia coming in at 126. Manon weighed in at 125.5. And Maia looked terrible on the scales this morning. She looked absolutely awful. Eyes sunken in, heavy. She was sucked out. She gave this crazy grimace flex, though, where, like, she was just trying to hold it together, but she was flexing with everything she had after the weight got called. Manon came in and looked in solid shape, business as usual. She's tall, she's skinny. She doesn't seem to have a problem cutting that weight versus Maia, who's a decent bit thicker. You know, she's a shorter, tankier type of fighter. And again, this is a spot where I like the ceremonial face-offs because Maia looked refueled very, very well. She came up, all the color was back in her face, her eyes weren't sunk out anymore, she had energy, she was smiling, like she looked fantastic at the ceremonial weigh-ins. I would have been a little concerned based on what I'd seen on the scale, but she looked great. This was a good face-off. Manon obviously is a decent bit taller than Jennifer Maia. Man, what we've got is Fiorot is a minus 450 or higher favorite. You know, right now, Superbook has her at minus 450. The comeback on Jennifer Maia is plus 375. And I mean, guys, like, so this is a spot where, now I do have like a chalky 1 unit money line parlay, the just win parlay, where like all the big favorites need to just come through and get the dang thing done. I don't care how close it is. It pays like, you know, almost 6-1 or something like that. So I do have a 1 unit play that has Manon Fiorot involved in it. But I talked about this on the podcast that I feel like this number is stupid for Jennifer Maia. She's one of the best in the division. She's competed with the highest level of competition that the UFC has to offer. And while all of us think Manon Fiorot is awesome, she's incredible. She's a good striker. She's tough. She's mean. She's got a good frame for the division. She's fought nobody. She's fought absolutely nobody. And minus 450 is just a stupid number to be laying against Jennifer Maia. And the other thing that we don't really know about Manon Fiorot is how good she is on the mat. She likes to mix in takedowns every once in a while, but we've never seen her in a non-control position. And if you go back and you watch the Mayra Bruno Silva fight, she actually gets reversed at the end of round 1 and ends up on her back. And if it wasn't for Silva having just the most awful fight IQ I've ever seen in my life, there could have been a situation there where she was in trouble being underneath a better submission specialist, but Silva wanted to stand up and keep on banging and then never threw a single strike. So, like, Jennifer Maia is going to hustle. Jennifer Maia is going to get in the pocket. She's going to get in her face. She's going to wing bombs. We have seen Manon Fiorot react not very well to people who do that to her when they're able to crash the pocket and close the range on her. And then my big concern with Jennifer Maia was that she would not bring her singlet. She would not wrestle. And if I knew she was going to wrestle in this fight, I'd be backing her, you know, 2-3 units deep. Like, I'd be all over Jennifer Maia if I knew she was going to wrestle in this spot. But we can't ever count on her to wrestle. She just doesn't do it often enough. Manon does. It's insane that I missed this coming into the Monday show because you look at her last fight against Silva and she attempted 6 takedowns. You go back on every single fight Manon Fiorot's ever been in, she mixes in the takedowns regularly. And if she tries to take Jennifer Maia down because that's her process, because that's what she does, that's going to open up a whole new can of worms. Jennifer Maia's got excellent sweeps from her half-guard bottom position. We saw her snap off JoJo Wood's arm with a first-round armbar when she ended up getting taken down in the first round. And then if they are standing on the feet, trading in the pocket, that's where Jennifer Maia does her best work. I got to shout out MMA Fox, John Stargarian from the Club and Sub podcast. We were going back and forth in the DMs this morning talking about it. And I already said that I felt like this number was stupid for Jennifer Maia, but I just need to win on Manon Fiorot. That's not really my style. I'm the type that takes these underdogs in these spots when the line doesn't make sense. Folks, I'm probably going to back Jennifer Maia. Like, don't be shocked if you see me tweet out that I'm on Jennifer Maia for the fights tomorrow after you see this video, because I do think that this number is stupid, and very much like how, and I'm going to make this comparison at my own expense here. I bet on Volkov, and I bet on Hooker as a fade on Allen and Aspinall stepping up in competition. Now, both those guys obviously are world-class talents, but it was their first time stepping toe in the deep end. This might be a bigger jump in competition than either of those guys had. Like, Manon Fiorot has fought absolutely nobody in the UFC. Like, bare bottom rungs competition. And she's not a young star. She's 33 years old. She's going from taking a fighter who is 7-2 to someone who has a 19-8 record. Like, the experience levels are massively different. And I know you've heard all week about how Jennifer Maia held down Valentina Shevchenko for a round, and everyone's sick of hearing about it. But the fact is, it happened. And if she can do that to the champion, one of the greatest women's fighters we've ever seen, even for a round, that is miles ahead of anything that Manon Fiorot has ever faced. So I'm probably going to take the plunge here on Jennifer Maia, getting damn near 4-1 on the shot to do it. And I'm also going to play the submission prop. You know what? What I've discovered is very much, if you guys remember, a couple weeks back, we hit a submission prop on T-Rex because it was 9-1. And we were like, holy crap, like, he wins all of his fights by club and sub. Like, how is it 9-1 for him to win by submission here? He pulled off the sub and we got it. Well, Jennifer Maia, folks, is 18-1 to win by submission. Now, again, I know we're being crazy here talking about going against Manon Fiorot, but if Jennifer Maia is going to win this fight, I mean, it's going to be a greasy, tight decision, or it's going to be in one of these ground scrambles. It's going to be when this fight hits the ground and she rolls to her back and snatches up an arm, or if she sweeps, you know, the fighter that's not as experienced on the mat and tries to have some wrestling top control, who, by the way, is a kickboxer, not a wrestler. I definitely think that if this fight takes place at all on the ground, Jennifer Maia by sub, in hindsight, is going to look like a, you know, plus 150 type of prop instead of an 18-1. So regardless of whether or not I bet Jennifer Maia's money line, Jennifer Maia by submission at 18-1 is maybe one of the craziest lines I've ever seen, and I absolutely will be betting Jennifer Maia by sub 18-1. I just got to figure out if I want to put a quarter or a half unit on it. I'm not sure yet. We'll figure it out, but I know that one took a little bit, folks, but I bring on the hate. Like, I'm ready. You know what I do? Openness, honesty, transparency. I will always tell you what I'm betting on. I thought about betting this one myself after the abuse I took from last week and just not saying anything about it, so I didn't have to get ridiculed if it lost, but that's just not my style. You guys can dance on my grave all you want if I make a bet that you think is a bad bet, but I'm going to tell you what I bet and when I bet it. You make your choices. Tail or fade, you go right ahead and do what you want to do. But that's probably what I'm going to end up doing for tomorrow. Next fight up, Ali Khizriev taking on Denis Tiuliulin. We've got Khizriev coming in at 185 on the dot. Tiuliulin came in at 185.5, and Khizriev's got that soft body baby face looking thing going on. He's a little undersized at 185. We know that, but I think that, you know, kind of enables his gas tank, his speed, his ability to keep on pushing. So can't necessarily hate on it, but he threw up the number 1, waving his hand at the cameras. He's ready to go here. His opponent, Denis, came in looking solid. No issues for that guy whatsoever. Good face-off. Obviously, Denis has the size advantage here, but it's not as bad as I was expecting. You know, Denis is one of these big, marauding, power puncher type of guys. Kill or be killed once he gets into the cage, and I thought he was going to be a lot bigger, if I'm being honest. So I'm kind of happy to see that. I do have Khizriev in a parlay. Folks, that is long gone. You're not getting any bargains on Khizriev whatsoever. They opened this guy way too low, and all the degenerate gamblers have piled in. He's like a 10-1, 11-1 favorite now. He probably should be in that 8 or 9-1 type of favorite situation, but it doesn't even do you any good to parlay him at this point, because what? If you've got like a 2-leg parlay and it pays minus 125, you'll get even money if you have Khizriev. Like, he just isn't going to add much value to anybody at this stage. Unfortunately, if you missed the boat, I can't really endorse him all that much. If you want to take a flyer on a prop, I think the sub prop is maybe the way to go. The problem with this guy is he's one of those ground and pound snatch and neck types. So if he wants to pound you through the canvas floor, he can. And if he wants to take your neck, he can. So I do kind of think he's going to end up needing the neck because Denis is such a big, tough dude. I don't know that he's going to like KO him flat or anything like that. He probably pounds him until he opens up and then sinks the neck in, that kind of thing. So I think the club and sub, or just the mauling on the floor until he gets a submission, is more the way that it goes. I'd be predicting the sub prop personally, and I might end up on that myself as well. Batgerel, Danaa taking on Chris Gutierrez. Danaa came in at 136 and Gutierrez 135. Danaa is jacked, folks. This guy threw a flex up, started flexing way before they ever called his weight, knew it was coming. He is in some kind of shape. Chris Gutierrez, though, blew his kiss absolutely relaxed, looking good, same business as usual for him. These guys size up well. They went nose to nose at the face-offs. This was a great face-off. I can't wait for this fight. I am on Chris Gutierrez. I just got a 1-unit shot on the kid. We are in the big cage. We're not in the apex, so I do think that the leg kicks, the speed, the movement, the elusiveness of Gutierrez is going to be the story here. I'm kind of feeling Gutierrez by decision because I think Danaa is basically going to spend the entire fight chasing this man around the cage. If he clips him, though, if he lands one big bomb, that's all Batgerel needs to finish the fight. So this one is kind of terrifying, and the closer the line gets to a pick'em, the less I like Gutierrez. I like the dog money. I like the underdog price tag. I don't want anything to do with laying chalk on Gutierrez against a guy that hits the way that Danaa does. So yeah, it's kind of Danaa by KO, Gutierrez by decision. That's kind of the way I look here. I mean, there's always the chance that Gutierrez could do the leg kick TKO thing, but I think Danaa is good enough and tough enough to avoid something like that. I think it'll be kind of a close and hairy decision type of situation. Sara McMann taking on Karol Rosa. We got both women coming in at 135 pounds. Sara McMann, as always, is just in absolutely insane shape. Gave a nice little smile up there. One arm flex from Karol Rosa, looking good as ever for her side of things as well. When they face off, size advantage goes to Rosa. We're expecting that. Thickness advantage goes to McMann. Can't say we're surprised by that either. I mean, this is a spot where I've got a big parlay. That's Khizriev and Rosa is my big parlay for the night. I'm a little concerned with the grappling of McMann, but at the same time, I think we've just seen this story too many times. We've got a young fighter. We've got a 40-plus-year-old veteran who is known to slow down and gas out. Like, I just think eventually Rosa's going to get it done. Like, whether she just outclasses her and keeps that solid takedown defense rating up and hurts her on the feet, works her way to a decision, or if she's one of these ones that has to wear her out with strikes off of her back and trying to get back up and then TKOs her in the third, either way, I think Rosa's coming home with her arm raised. I don't mind the inside the distance. Rosa's actually got some decent jiu-jitsu on her, and we've seen McMann really, when she gasses out, she taps. That's kind of her thing. Rosa likes to work more with her hands, though. So personally, I'm feeling the TKO just because she's one of these punch-first type of fighters. I don't know that she'll go for the sub. So I'm thinking TKO in that third round sprinkle is definitely on my mind here for this one. But don't be surprised if she gets the sub like everybody else does, because once McMann is gassed, she just doesn't really have much fight left in her at that point. Magny taking on Max Griffin. Magny came in at 170 flat. Griffin needed 171 to get it done. Magny had a good smile on his face. Nice flex. The dude is, he looked a bit rough on the scales today, but he's huge. We know he's huge, and it takes a lot for him to get down to 171, so that's to be expected. Max Griffin, on the other hand, gave a solid flex, big smile. He looked excellent today. If you're a Max Griffin backer, you're going to like what you saw on the scales today. Max is amped up. I mean, roaring at the ceremonial face-offs. This was an intense, close-up, in-person type of nose-to-nose affair. Max showing his hands to Magny, and then once they broke, he was already screaming at the crowd again. I mean, there is something to be said for the personal belief a fighter has in themselves and in their abilities. This is a spot where Max Griffin is riding high. Like, he's never been this confident. He's never looked this good. He believes in himself. He called for the round 2 TKO. Like, it's hard to argue. It really is. I do have Magny in a parlay. I do think that he's the grinding type of fighter that's going to go ahead and just wear out someone like Max over the course of a 15-minute fight. I think his range, I think his volume, I think the grappling, being able to just grind him up against the cage, like, I do think all those things are in effect here, but at the same time, I recognize the type of dangerous fighter Max Griffin is right now. He's been underestimated by everybody in his last couple fights, myself included, and he might just show up and prove everybody wrong this weekend. So if you're on the dog here, I get it. Magny's my boy. I've made a lot of money with Magny. He's a good soldier. You know exactly what he brings to the table every time. I do think this is a step up in competition for Max Griffin. I do think that Magny's ceiling overall is higher. He's the younger guy. I like his gas tank better. Like, I gotta rock with him. I have to at this point because we've had so much success going back, so we gotta keep it rolling here. Aleksei Oleinik, I'm sorry, not yet. We've got Marc Diakiese taking on Slava Claus, Borshchev. We've got Diakiese coming in at 155. Borshchev needed 155 and a half, and Diakiese was shredded. Oh my God. Like, I have said shredded before, but jeez. Like, he was stone cold on the scales today. I don't know if it was good lighting today. Like, nobody else looked that jacked, though. Marc Diakiese's back is against the wall here this week, and he absolutely knows it in the camp that he had. I mean, he's always in good shape, but like you can tell he recognizes he needs this win here with the way his body is physically today. Big smile from Slava up on the scale. He also is in very good shape, not nearly jacked as someone like Diakiese, but you can tell he put the work in as well. Full of energy. He's excited. I love the guy's attitude. This was a good face-off. Slight size advantage goes to Slava, but another intense face-off. I mean, Diakiese, you could see him like working his jaw muscles. You could see like the striations in those muscles on his cheek there while they were going face-to-face, and they wouldn't walk away. This is one of those ones where the UFC had to be kind of like, okay, guys, like, all right, break it up. Like, get off the stage. Like, because no one wanted to be the first one to move or blink. This is going to be a hell of a fight, folks. Like, this one is going to be really, really fun. I do have Marc Diakiese here, and I'm stupid enough to go ahead and sink 2 units in him. We got plus 160, plus 165, I think, earlier in the week on Monday. Blame my co-host, Andrew, at Bets and Picks MMA. Went ahead and talked me into this one. I was on Diakiese last time. He just had to survive round 1. He did not. So, kind of had to not throw the breakdown out the window, had to understand that if he survived round 1, that fight looks entirely different, and go back to the well here. Fade the step up in competition for Borshchev. Hopefully Marc Diakiese saves his job, gets the win, cashes a big underdog ticket for us. That's really what we need and what we're looking for here. But we'll see what happens. The closer this thing gets to pick'em, the less I like it. You know, this is one of those spots, again, where, like, I totally understand why everybody likes Slava. He's a beast. He looks like he's got the goods. He looks like he's got a good gas tank. He looks like he's the bigger hitter out of these two guys. I just think he's too big of a favorite in this spot. I think the hype was a little bit too much for him coming in. And again, I like the big dog odds that we got earlier in the week on Diakiese. So I'm not necessarily saying that he's just going to be, you know, he's not a home run. He's not the lock of the night, if you will. Shout out to my guy, MMA Lock of the Night. So don't, you know, pile in on him now if he's at plus 120 or some shit like that. That's not what we're looking for. I like the plus 160 a whole hell of a lot more. We'll see what happens. Kind of tailing my co-host here on this one. So riding by his coattails and hoping he can cash me a couple of units here. Next up, Aleksei Oleinik taking on Ilir Latifi. Oleinik came in at 246, Latifi 239.5, and Oleinik looked in solid shape for, you know, a 52-year-old man. So he gave the classic Oleinik one-arm flex. Had to throw that in the thumbnail for last week's podcast, but he moved super well. Ilir Latifi is an absolute tank of a... Did he add muscle? Like, how is it possible that this man just gets wider? Like... I want to see Ilir Latifi stand next to Will Knight. I want to see what those two guys look like standing next to each other, because they're both super short but super wide, and I don't know how, but it looks like he keeps piling the muscle on top of himself. Obviously, when they face off, Oleinik is taller, Latifi is wider. These guys trained together before, so it wasn't super intense. It was pretty friendly, actually. Oleinik's always friendly with his opponents. He doesn't have beef with anybody. And the wider this line gets, the more I'm tempted to ride one last time with my boy Aleksei Oleinik. So I'm just not a Latifi believer, folks. This guy's a 185er who has piled up an incredible amount of muscle on his body that forced him up to 205. Then injuries and weight cuts have forced him to abandon 205, so he piled more muscle on top, and now he's up at heavyweight. I don't think he belongs at heavyweight. And even though you could say the same thing for Oleinik, that he's only up at heavyweight kind of at the end of his career when he's too old to cut down and get down to 205 or 185 where you'd think he normally would be. He at least still has some, you know, ability to move. Latifi just kind of plods forward, he wings heavies, and unless he clips you with a big bomb to get you out of there early, he gasses out. He just wants to ride on top position and stay on top of you, slow it down, grind out a 15-minute decision. I mean, if Aleksei Oleinik is going to reverse and sweep anybody, or honestly, if he's going to have a striking advantage over anybody, it's Ilir Latifi. Like, he's taller, he's longer, we're in the big cage. And one thing that actually really caught my ear was listening to the interview with Aleksei Oleinik. He talked about how he needs to change his style and evolve, because recently what he's been doing is car crashing with people. He's been rushing in there, causing this massive amount of damage, and hoping he comes out on top, and he realizes now he's too old for that. I talked about this on the podcast. You remember that time he outboxed Fabricio Verdum? Believe it or not, my boy Aleksei Oleinik actually has half-decent striking. When he wants to, he knows how to use his reach. When he wants to, he knows how to use his movement. Honestly, I think this 40-year-old Aleksei Oleinik has a better gas tank than Ilir Latifi. And if he can keep his distance from someone like Ilir Latifi, and then deal with the ground game when it comes to him. We know he's not going to defend the takedowns or anything like that, but if he avoids the bomb on the feet, once Latifi gets desperate enough to pin him up against the fence or try to take him down, then we're in Oleinik's world. It doesn't matter that he's on his back. He's still going to be able to submit this man, and people come with the no neck comments. I get it, but you don't need a neck for a scarf hold. You really don't. So I do think that there's paths to victory for Aleksei Oleinik, and I've been waiting for this line to peak. I'm probably going to jump on my guy Oleinik. One last ride with the boy, because I think if there's ever a fight that he was going to win, it's going to be a fight like this. It's a fight where he finally has the size advantage. It's a fight where he has a significant grappling jiu-jitsu edge over a guy who just is relatively one-dimensional. And he's actually got a striking advantage in this spot, too. He doesn't have power. He doesn't have youth. But I think he might actually have a gas advantage, which is ridiculous to say, but I kind of think he does. So, yeah, one last ride with Aleksei Oleinik. Haven't bet it yet, because I'm not sure if this line is going to keep piling up or not. It does look like money continues to flow in on Aleksei Oleinik, or on Ilir Latifi here. Actually, it looks like the buyback has already just started. So he was at minus 210 when I checked before the show. He's at minus 200 now, which means a little bit of action has hit our guy, Aleksei Oleinik, once he popped up to that 180 price tag. So what we've got at Superbook, sorry, the show's going to be a little long today, folks. I got a lot to talk about, apparently. Line is minus 200, Latifi plus 175, Oleinik per Superbook. So yeah, that plus 175 at Superbook is probably about as good as it's going to get, and that's going to be probably where my money ends up. Askar Askarov taking on Kai Kara-France. 126 for Askar, 125.5 for Kai Kara-France. Askar was all business, in and out, blank face on the scale today. Wasn't going to give you a lick of emotion. Kai Kara-France gave a very confident flex. He's in good shape as ever when they face off. Askar is actually taller. I was a little surprised to see that one. He's one of these guys I always forget how tall and lanky he is because my brain says he's a wrestler, so you kind of forget that that's the frame he has. This was another good, intense face-off. I mean, they always are with Kai Kara-France. Who doesn't love that guy? He was doing the crazy eyes thing, getting in there close on him. Askar, though, not blinking, not phased whatsoever. This guy knows he's destined for the belt. Respect, though, at the end of it, you know, they did shake hands and talk to each other a little bit. I love this guy. I love this fight. Askar Askarov is tied to my parlay with Neil Magny, so hopefully Magny gets his half done so I can hit this Askar side of things. And honestly, I think he just mauls Kai Kara-France. You know, Rogerio Bontorin gassed out, and that's when Kai Kara-France was able to kind of brawl with him for a minute and clip him and KO him. You can clip and KO anybody when you're Kai Kara-France, but I don't think Askar is going to give him that opportunity. He's too slick on the feet. He's surprisingly good striking. And then on the ground, he's way better than anything Kai Kara-France has ever faced on the mat. So I think there's some upside here for Kai Kara-France to actually get finished. I think Askar is live for a submission in one of these scrambles, especially if this fight makes it out of round one. You know, round two, round three, when the grappling just gets more and more exhausting and his power kind of starts to wane and go away. The longer this fight lasts, the better it is for Askar. So I'm thinking Askar Askarov. I'm thinking Askar by decision or submission, somewhere in that ballpark, but definitely got him in a parlay. Matt Brown taking on Brian Barberena. Both men came in at 170.5, and classic Matt Brown took a big, deep breath on the scales today, looking old. Like, oh, this man looks worn up there. He really does look like a 40-year-old this time around. Brian Barberena, on the other hand, showing off his kids on live stream like he always does, and the nails that they paint for him every single week. You love to see that, Family Guys. Matt's taller when they face off. Brian Barberena, however, much, much thicker. I've been doing this on this fight all week. You know, I said I kind of leaned to Matt Brown on Monday because of, you know, that raw power that still has it. But the more the week goes on, I kind of think I'm shifting over to Brian Barberena. I know he's kind of looked like a little bit of a shell of himself lately, but the fact is he's like 32 years old, 33 years old. Like, if he comes back from an injury, he potentially has some ability to recover and continue fighting on, whereas Matt Brown is at that point where he's already done that, still has durability issues, and is now 40. So as much as I was on Matt Brown earlier in the week, I think I'm on Brian Barberena now. I haven't bet this fight, and I promised myself on Monday I wasn't going to. Let's see if I can keep to that promise come Saturday, because I'm struggling on this one. I shouldn't bet this fight. Now that there's video evidence of me saying twice that I shouldn't bet this fight, I probably will. But I mean, like, Brian Barberena knockout is probably the prop that I'll be looking to attack and sprinkle here in this spot. But this one could be a drag-out 3-round war. This one could be over in the first. Either guy landing strong, getting it done. But I said I think Matt had more gas in the tank on Monday. I've kind of rethought that. Maybe Brian has a little more gas in the tank. Listening to his interview actually helped out about how he's been dealing with some injuries, took some time off to heal, had the surgery to repair some stuff. Like, now that he's kind of got the rust knocked off his boots after that last fight, he feels like he's in better shape coming into this one. And fighters always say that, so you can't necessarily believe it. But again, his age would suggest that that's at least possible. Matt Brown is Matt Brown, and Matt Brown is headed towards retirement. So there's no getting around that fact. He's never going to come back and feel and look better because he's just at that age. So kind of lean Brian Barberena here in this spot. Final answer, Brian Barberena. Moving on. Jojo Calderwood taking on Alexa Grasso. Alexa Grasso, sorry about that. 125 pounds for both women today. Jojo Wood gave herself bunny ears. Getting up there for, having fun. No issues. Grasso looked focused. She is thick up at 125. Gave her a solid flex up there on the scales. When they face off, there is a decent, solid size advantage for Jojo Wood. Man, this is another fight that I'm super sketched on right now. So, now I've got that just win parlay. Manafjord and Alexa Grasso are both the ladies that I put in that just win parlay saying, lines are off. They're too big of favorites. All I need is for them to win. And now come Friday, I'm sitting here going, why am I not just betting both these underdogs? Why am I not just taking a plus 200 and a plus 375 and hoping to go 1-1 on them? Because that's, as long as one of them pulls off the upset, that's a win. And that's kind of what I'm looking at potentially doing. Because Jojo Calderwood, she has way more volume than Alexa Grasso. And I see a lot of people talking about how, Jojo's been finished recently and Alexa Grasso hits hard. It's like, but Jojo doesn't really get knocked out. She's been submitted a lot lately. She hasn't been knocked out. And Grasso is relatively low volume compared to Jojo. I mean, Joanne Calderwood puts up over 100 significant strikes with no issues. Grasso, on the other hand, is a little bit more low volume, sits on her punches a little bit more, kind of wants a technical battle somewhere in the ballpark of 80 significant strikes per fight. I have a feeling that Jojo can squeeze this one away. I mean, this might be a Joanne Calderwood by decision type of spot because you're getting plus 205 on her money line. But trying to look for this prop here for you real quick. If you were to take a look at Jojo by decision and hope she does just enough to get it done, that's plus 350. And I expect her to have the higher volume and push more of a pace against a fighter who realistically has no reason to try to take her down. We don't expect Alexa Grasso to do anything but come out and box with her. So if Grasso is going to box with her in the big cage and we're not going to see any grappling, we're not going to see an armbar, we're not going to see a rear naked choke, like she really does have to hurt her on the feet to get her out of there. And not many people hurt Joanne Calderwood on the feet. And not many people do it enough to make her, get knocked out or submitted after that point. Like, she has never been knocked out in the UFC. She's only ever been submitted. So, man, this is another one where, let me get the tinfoil cap back on. Women's MMA gonna women's MMA, folks. Like, I do think that Alexa Grasso is my girl. Absolutely love her. Been rooting for her since the day she made it to the UFC. Love her skill set. But the fact is, she came up from 115 pounds, and she is slightly smaller at 125. Jojo's got a size advantage. Now, Grasso does have a 1-inch reach advantage, I believe, here in this spot. But I'm sorry, Grasso has the 1-inch reach advantage here in this spot, but Jojo's got the height advantage, and she's just the naturally bigger woman, and she averages 6.71 significant strikes per minute, where Grasso averages 4.96. So, I mean, 2.5 full, almost 3 significant strikes per minute more coming from Jojo Calderwood over the course of her career. I mean, Grasso's last fight, she had 38 significant strikes on Macy Barber. Like, Joanne Wood lost a split to Murphy, and she landed 123 significant strikes. Folks, I'm at this weird spot where I think that Jojo Wood is way more live than I thought earlier in the week. Like I said, I kind of think that maybe Grasso wins the fight at the end of the day, but I think Jojo could pay off that plus 200 dog price tag. We've seen nothing but favorites the last couple weeks. Everybody's going favorite, and it really looks like these price tags are a little inflated the more I think about it. And in certain spots, it seems like the price tags are just a little inflated, and a couple of these dogs probably could bark this week. So the women especially, I think the women are being overestimated and underestimated specifically this week. So I mean, like I said, the plan may be to take Jennifer Maia and JoJo Wood and hope to go 1-1 on the upsets and bank a profit there. We'll see what I end up doing. We'll see. Main event time. Curtis Blaydes taking on Chris Daukaus. I promise you nothing changing here on this one. We can go ahead and take off the tinfoil hat. Blaydes comes in at 259. Daukaus came in at 243. Blank face on Curtis Blaydes. Half-hearted, arms up. He's doing the usual thing. He just doesn't really want to be there for face-offs or weigh-ins. Chris Daukaus was very much still the soft body. The weight's coming off. He's built for speed. This guy, lost all that weight from before he started fighting professionally. Blaydes is a decent amount of size bigger than Daukaus. Daukaus, like I mentioned, built for speed. He's a little slimmer. He's a little skinnier. I don't want anything to do with this fight. I think Curtis Blaydes should roll because he does what he does, but the fast hands of Daukaus could be a problem. We've seen Curtis Blaydes' chin checked a couple times by some big power punchers. You got to wonder where it's at this point. But if he gets this fight to the ground, I don't know that Daukaus has the ability to fight off the takedowns and get back up. I don't know that Daukaus has the ability to defend that redonkulous wrestling of Blaydes. We talk about it all the time that, one training camp for a wrestler is probably not going to make you good enough to defend the second, the third, the fourth attempt of a chain wrestler. If you get that big stuff on that first takedown, then that's good for you. And for the people that fire one and done takedowns, maybe you'll do okay. But someone like Curtis Blaydes, Merabvashvili, these guys that just stick to you like glue, you don't get that second takedown defense. You don't get that third takedown defense. Eventually, your ass ends up on the mat. We know that Daukaus is a submission artist. We know he's got that black belt in jiu-jitsu. We've never seen it put to good use in the UFC, so I can't bank on him suddenly pulling a rabbit out of the hat for no reason here this week. I still kind of think it's Curtis Blaydes, and I think it's Blaydes by TKO in the second or the third round when Daukaus finally slows down and accepts his fate there on the mat. I like Chris Daukaus. Of the two guys, I'll be honest, I'm a bit more of a fan of Chris Daukaus. I'd like to see him win this fight in advance. I would love it if he clipped Blaydes and knocked him out, but that's a heart pick and one where I can't put my money there. I mean, if you want to ride on a heart pick, plus 550 for the knockout is not, that's not a bad shit. Now I'm talking myself into it. That's not a bad line. If the guy's path to victory is KO and you're getting 5-1 on the KO against a guy that's been chinned before, I might end up sprinkling. Holy crap. So, I mean, I just think violence is the answer here. They're giving you plus money on the under 1.5 because Blaydes tends to pull these fights a little bit late. If Blaydes wins, it's probably sailing over that 1.5 because it'll take him a round or two to get Chris out of there. If Chris wins, it's probably that first round where he just kind of binks him and it's over. So if you want to play Chris, I'd say go with the KO or inside the distance even because, like I said, that submission prop is technically on the table at some point here. But yeah, I parlay this fight doesn't go the distance or something like that because I just don't see either of these guys surviving if the other guy is in control, basically. So I'm going to say Curtis Blaydes by takedown and ground and pound, but again, I'm just really not confident on that read because if Chris Daukaus wins this thing, it's just like last week. It's going to be Aspinall. It's going to be the way Aspinall did it, whereas like in the first round where he looks like he's untouchable because he caught him coming in for a takedown or something, like if he wins, he's going to look like he should have been minus 500, but that's just the way their styles match up. So at this point, not touching it. Might end up sprinkling Daukaus just for some shits and giggles, beer money on the main event if we're having a good night by that point, but no official picks coming in. Long episode today, folks. Sorry about that. I'll try to get back and timestamp it for you. That's the undefeated post-weigh-in show for this week. Fun card. Really fun card this week. Some trap spots. Be careful out there. I'm doing my best to try to point those trap spots out to you. If you're laying the big chalk on this card, just like I said, tread very lightly. This isn't necessarily one of those home run type of cards. Good luck, regardless of whether you're tailing or fading myself personally. Hope you make some money. Let's roll.